I spent hundreds on gifts for my nieces and nephews, but their mom told me I was embarrassing for not spending more, so I made the decision to ruin their lives forever. They're now begging me to stop. Ever since I was little, my parents beat it into me that when I grew up I needed to provide for them. My dream of making more money was always accompanied by the thought of showering my family with gifts and love. I studied hard in school and paid over 50% of the rent as a teenager, yet I never got as much as a genuine thank you from my parents. Deep down, I think I knew something was wrong, but I craved their approval so badly I just pushed it to the back of my mind. Fast forward to now, I'm 28. Last Thanksgiving, I was actually feeling really good for the first time in a few years. I was able to purchase gifts for everyone: my parents, my sister Emma, her husband Joe, and their 3 kids. I even got extras of everything so the kids wouldn't fight over who got what, plus some more in case anyone brought unexpected plus ones. I convinced myself that this was how everything needed to feel. But then came the bomb drop. I showed up at my parents' house with presents loaded in my car. When I knocked, my mom answered the door. I expected some sort of hug or even just a simple hello, but instead, she hit me with, "We think it's better if you don't join us this year." I swear I thought she was pranking me. I even started to chuckle. But then Emma hollered from the living room, "This isn't a gathering for cheapskates. You've become a real drag lately." I just stood there, dumbfounded. My dad was hovering in the background, not saying a word. Mom looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. And Emma? She looked downright pleased with herself. I just stared at her blankly while my body went through the full range of emotions: confusion, rage, humiliation, everything. But I just nodded slowly and said, "All right, if that's how everyone feels," before turning around and going to sit in my car, alone, surrounded by a pile of unwanted gifts. They called me a cheapskate, a drag. Where was this coming from? An awful gut feeling washed over me. I had this nagging suspicion that somehow Emma was behind all of this, except I couldn't figure out why. So I did what I always do in these types of situations. I asked myself, if I were my own brother-in-law, what would I think of me? Would I appreciate myself? My head instantly flooded with memories: helping with their kids' extracurricular fees, chipping in for their vacation fund when money got tight, and even covering part of their down payment when they bought their house. That left me with a clear answer: hell yeah, I would appreciate myself. It was at that moment that I allowed myself to get angry, like, really angry. Angry enough to decide this wasn't ending here. Angry enough to march back up to their front door. They were still there, my parents whispering to each other like they were surprised I hadn't just driven away. And Emma sprawled on the sofa scrolling through TikTok with the volume on full blast. I walked straight in. "What's going on here? Why am I suddenly unwelcome?" Emma smirked without even looking up from her phone. "You think we haven't noticed you've been slacking lately? Even the kids know. They've barely gotten anything from you in months." Honestly, I would have rather she slapped me in the face than spew that bull. I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Are you kidding me? I have hundreds of dollars worth of presents for your kids sitting in my car right now." But she interrupted. "I don't want to hear it. A few years ago when they were born, you did way more. It's honestly embarrassing." I turned to my parents, expecting some kind of intervention or support. Instead, Mom gave me this awkward half smile and said, "She's got a point, honey. You just leased that new truck. You found money for that." For a moment, I was speechless. "The truck is financed," I replied, forcing myself to calm down. "And even if I paid cash, how does that suddenly make me responsible for Emma's family? They're not my kids." "You make twice what Joe does," Emma interrupted again, lounging back like we were discussing the weather. "We're a family. Family helps each other." I glanced at Joe, who was sitting silently in the corner. "So let me get this straight," I said. "Because I've been generous in the past, I'm now obligated to keep giving forever? And if I don't, I'm a cheapskate?" Emma shrugged. "If that's how you want to see it, well, that was my breaking point." I took a step back and shook my head. "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." I looked at my parents. "Enjoy your Thanksgiving." I walked out without waiting for a response. The drive home was tense, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I almost wanted to believe I was the villain here. Like there was no way I was suddenly not welcome at Thanksgiving anymore just because I hadn't given enough. When I got home, I sat in my driveway for a long time, just staring at the gifts I'd spent hours wrapping. Those bags made me feel sick now. The more I thought about it, the clearer everything became. It had been building for years. Thanksgiving was just the breaking point. Emma had always leaned on me financially. When she and Joe first got married, they struggled with money. Joe bounced between jobs, and Emma's part-time work barely covered basics. I stepped in to help, thinking it would be temporary. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. But temporary turned into years, and in a way, it really was all my fault. I made it too easy for Emma to depend on me. Somewhere along the way, I made a monster. And tonight was my wake-up call. I knew I had a decision to make. After some careful thinking, I realized there was only one solution. No more rescuing Emma and Joe. No more endless gifts to compensate for their financial irresponsibility. I was done. If they wanted their kids to have the things I'd been providing, they could figure it out themselves. themselves. It wasn't easy. Cutting off my sister meant potentially damaging my relationship with her children, and possibly my parents. But I couldn't continue being treated like an ATM instead of a brother and uncle. I didn't reach out to anyone, and no one contacted me either. I thought maybe they got the message, but I should have known Emma wouldn't let it go that easily. The silence stretched through Christmas and New Year's. No calls, no texts, nothing. For the first time in forever, I spent the holidays completely alone. It wasn't that I expected them to reach out, but it felt strange when the ball dropped at midnight and my phone remained silent. I won't lie, I thought about calling several times, but whenever I picked up my phone, I remembered Emma's smug face and her words. Gathering for cheapskates. I'd been their safety net for years, and they had the nerve to treat me like I was disposable? No thanks. By mid-January, things started shifting. Joe had always been a quiet type who avoided confrontation, but one evening, I got a text from him out of nowhere. Just wanted to say I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. I don't agree with what happened. Emma won't listen to me, but I thought you should know. I stared at my phone for a long time, unsure how to respond. Part of me appreciated knowing someone in the family recognized the injustice, but Joe had sat there silently that night, and his apology now felt insufficient. I finally replied, "Thanks for saying that, Joe, but this isn't something I can just brush off." He didn't push it further, which was fine by me. Then in early February, Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was in the middle of a video call when I heard aggressive knocking. I tried ignoring it at first, but it just kept going. When I finally answered, there stood Emma, looking frazzled and irritated. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me before I could object. I crossed my arms. "What's this about?" She didn't waste time. "You need to stop this childish behavior and start helping out again." I laughed in disbelief. "Helping out? You mean financing your life? I told you, I'm done with that." She glared at me. "You're the one with money to spare. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to throw this tantrum? The kids barely have what they need. Joe's struggling to keep everything together. We can't manage without your help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you listening to yourself? You're a grown woman, Emma. You have a husband and children. If you need more money, find better jobs. It's not my responsibility to solve your problems. You've always helped before," she snapped. "Why are you being so stingy now?" "Stingy?" I echoed. "You want to talk about stingy? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Thanksgiving because I supposedly wasn't generous enough with your kids. And now you're here asking for more? That takes some serious nerve." She started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "We're done here. I'm not giving you another penny, and I don't want to hear from you again until you learn how to act like an adult." She stood fuming for a moment before finally storming out. After Emma left, I thought that would be the end of it for a while. She'd sulk, maybe complain to our parents, but eventually realize I wasn't backing down. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but something told me I should. "Hello?" I said. "Is this Alex?" A woman asked. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Patricia Wilson. I'm an attorney. I represent a client who's raised concerns about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss this?"